Welcome to Bitcoin for Peace. I'm your host, DJ Valerie B. Love, and I have someone here who is on a mission to have truth out there and have honest elections and honest data that we can confirm and verify using Bitcoin. Welcome, Rafa Cordon, CEO of Simple Proof.
Hi, nice to be here, Valerie. Thank you for
Thanks.
inviting me.
Yeah, for sure. So, let's let everybody know who you are and how on earth can we make honest elections using Bitcoin? What the heck is that all about?
Yeah, so my name is Rafa Cordon. I've been involved in Bitcoin projects since 2017, um, doing a lot of different things with startups. I was involved in Lightning payments. Um, and my new sort of venture or project is called Simple Proof. Simple Proof is a solution that helps institutions and companies uphold the truth, basically
Mhm.
through permissionless, using a permissionless immutable storage like the Bitcoin blockchain, and
Mhm.
enabling any person to verify that the information is true. Um, we do this on Bitcoin, on the Bitcoin blockchain, using a protocol called Open Timestamps, which was developed by Peter Todd. Um, we've been doing this for about a year now. Um,
Mhm.
and well, simple proof can be used to safeguard any type of digital document. The first use case was elections documents, something that everybody
Okay.
cares about in a democracy.
And then so can you explain, like, how does this work and how does it compare to, like, the legacy system of elections?
This does not replace the election system. So how this works is basically any elections documents. We work specifically in Guatemala, and so the Guatemalan election it uses a lot of paper tally sheets. People go
Mhm.
to a voting table. They put in their votes at a certain time of the day. The voting polls are closed, and the votes are tallied per each table within a voting center. And each table is run by 5 volunteer citizens, and so they count the votes also
Mhm.
with political party observers that are watching each vote get counted,
Okay.
and that vote count goes into a tally sheet, this document, which is sort of the input that is used to calculate and determine who wins the election. So these tally sheets, in order for, in modern times, back, I don't know, 30 years, these tally sheets have been sort of transmitted to a centralized location that is in charge of tallying the votes and providing what they call the preliminary result. So there's a paper process that feeds the documents. It goes all the way up and determines who's the winner. But in parallel, there is a vote, like a fast vote counting system to publish preliminary results. And so originally, the first preliminary result system was a fax machine. So people would would take a tally sheet, put it in the fax. This fax was received in this centralized place where there were people counting the information that's coming in through a fax. Now these tally sheets, these documents in Guatemala is called document number 4 because of the order of documents. They go
Mhm.
through a scanner, and so these documents are scanned, and then there are people who are hired by the electoral tribunal, the institution that's in charge of organizing the elections. These people are hired for like data entry, so they're seeing the tally sheet on their screen and entering the numbers by hand. And then once this happens, though, that gets published on a preliminary results portal. And so this process has been going on for several years now. But back in the previous election in 2019, there was a movement, like a civil society movement, to sort of audit the election and know. And this group of people, they wanted to see how these documents were being transmitted and used to hello.
Hey there, you're breaking up just a bit.
Oh, sorry. Where did I
Rafa,
leave off?
you said they were using the fax system to transmit and tally the votes.
Yeah, and so now they use scanners, and so
Okay.
the documents are scanned and they go to a data entry place where people manually enter the votes. So this group of civil society, individuals, they wanted to understand what was going on with these tally sheets, these scanned documents. Where were they going? So they were downloading in real time the documents as soon as they were getting published by the electoral tribunal, and they started seeing this strange behavior where some tally sheets would go up, then they would be removed, and then other documents would go up and then be removed. It was like sketchy behavior that it's with the elections, you're able to trust the process, and so if this kind of behavior is going on, then that undermines the trust in the process. And of course, in every democracy, the power of the government is underpinned by the elections process. So
Mhm.
anyway, this civil society movement was happening, and so for the elections in 2023 last year, the electoral tribunal was more open to seeing how they could solve this problem. And so what they did was that they used simple proof and the Bitcoin blockchain to take the fingerprint, the hash of a document. Once
Mhm.
once the document was scanned, it goes through a scanner.
Mhm.
Take the hash, or what we call the digital signature, and
Mhm.
that hash using open timestamps protocol gets included inside a Bitcoin transaction, and then and subsequently goes into a Bitcoin block. So in that way, it makes this information immutable because nobody can come in and alter the Bitcoin blockchain. So that's what the government did.
And so I've got obviously tons and tons of questions. So what was the outcome of the
Well, the
election?
outcome. Oh, the election. The party who won is a party called Semilla, led by the president. His last name is Arevalo. Um, was a strange thing because Arevalo, this candidate was sort of like a political activist. He was a member of Congress, and nobody really expected him to win. And so and he was like an anti-corruption, sort of an anti-corruption. And so when he won the election, this sort of startled a lot of people, sort of governing pact, and it shocked the system basically. And so the system reacted in many ways, trying to sort of uh, overturn the election results and a lot of things. Yeah, so it was a pretty turbulent time in the young Guatemalan democracy.
And so were the incumbents trying to overturn this election who implemented this new protocol, procedure with using Bitcoin and simple proof?
The I think, I'm not sure who is behind everything, but there was definitely an effort by people in the administration to try to, stop the president elect from taking office. And so simple proof played I would say, a role in the process because it basically made the election results untamperable. I would say. I think
Mhm.
that's sort of the word, because nobody can edit what's on the Bitcoin blockchain. So in that way, those results are sort of immutable. And so what got timestamped is sort of tally sheets, which you could say is like the raw material or the input that's
Mhm.
used to actually you know sum up everything and determine who's the winner. And so I think it's a good thing because it sort of establishes a level of truth, right? At least we have a level of truth of the information fed into the vote counting system.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting is that enables other people, third party observers, or civil society movements, to actually count the votes themselves and check, check that everything counts. So there were by other people. For example, this movement called Fiscal, which is a vote counting, like an independent vote counting. Um, and so I think with elections, the thing is you need to be able to, with how we consume information now, we don't want 2 weeks to know who the president is, right?
Yeah.
We want to vote, and then we want to know as soon as votes are coming in, who's ahead, who's winning. And so the way that we used to consume information, everyone, how we're used to consume information, um, does not sort of fit with a paper process. I mean, it doesn't. It's the paper process is not as fast as we need it to be. It's not as transparent, and the last thing is that there's no way to verify it.
Yeah.
And so using like open timestamps and simple proof, which is just an interface to open timestamps, enables this sort of real-time information to be consumed in a transparent manner, but still with sort of the Bitcoin mantra of don't trust, verify. So
Mhm.
anybody can read the blockchain, right? It's not some database in some system, in someone's basement or whatever. All these conspiracy theorists, come up with all sorts of things. But here, like, who can argue against Bitcoin, right? Like, there's no like globalist agenda or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's a system with no ideology that basically, for the first time in humanity, lets us store information immutable, something that was not possible before.
Yeah, and it just I mean, it seems like just when you said fax machine, it's just like it just the fact that things are done on paper still is very odd, and it's like, okay, I get it. Let's move, to the future here. Uh, Obviously, we've got a huge issue here in the states, um, with the elections coming up, and with what happened in the previous election, and Trump won, Biden won, whoever, everyone's conflicting. I would love to see a solution like this to go into effect here in the United States. How, with clogging up Bitcoin, how does this solution cause any issues with the functionality of Bitcoin, especially people who are using, needing to use it for transactions? Does it push fees up? Does it take up too much space? Like, can you help us understand that?
Sure. So when you said, so just back, you mentioned, like, backing up a bit, you mentioned the paper process.
Mhm.
I actually am a fan of paper
You are? Okay,
because,
cool.
yes, because what's good about paper is when you're counting the actual votes, anybody can verify paper, right?
That's true.
At
Right.
least in
Okay.
Guatemala, in the voting tables, you have 5 volunteer citizens, and between 3 and 4 political observers, plus election observation missions from international society organizations. So you
Mhm.
have maybe 10 people looking at every vote get counted and put into the tally sheet and
Mhm.
counting it themselves as each vote is checked. So that part I think is very powerful because it lets anyone verify. The thing is, when you sum up, millions of votes, you can't just count it by hand. It becomes a very slow process. So if we can take that initial paper count and store that, write it in stone, then whatever
Mhm.
happens afterwards, we have a way to come back to the original input and check that everything makes sense. I'm not a fan of electronic voting because in that way, yeah, it's just a machine, and you don't it it's not easy for any person to verify what's going on in the machine. I'm not saying there's there's sketchy things going on with machines. I have no way of knowing,
Yeah.
but
But you're
neither
trusting
has
somebody that has some type of code that you don't understand, but you can understand a piece of paper with some check marks on it and say, "Okay,
exactly.
Rafa got 10 million votes here." Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I guess having the redundancy makes sense also. But I do like the idea, like you said, that anybody can do it. My kid can do it. not that they would let somebody under 18 do it, but it's simple that people can participate in this process. Um,
Yeah.
have you so are there any other elections in places that you guys have used this technology?
No, this was the first time that it was used in Guatemala. We are speaking with other authorities in different in public institutions, just to see there is interest in other places to use
Mhm.
this technology. Um, and I have to say, elections is just it's a very compelling use case, but
Yeah.
it's only one use case. This is You can use this, for example, for court rulings. For example,
Mm.
making sure that nobody can edit a court ruling. Making them immutable. You can use it for digital evidence. For example, in a trial, someone submits digital files as evidence.
Mhm.
This could be timestamped in order to make sure that the digital evidence that was submitted cannot be modified by anyone. Um, Other cases, for example, intellectual property filings, for example, filing trademarks
Yeah.
or all that stuff, patents and things like that. Freedom of Information Act requests. When an institution hands over digital information as part of a Freedom of Information Act request, that should get timestamped as well to prove that that's the information that the institution delivered to whoever made the request. So
Uh-huh.
there's a lot of different use cases for this, particularly in the public sector, where there are these documents that are produced by institutions that a lot of people care about. For
Such
example,
as
elections, such as
it's
elections,
obviously
right?
elections, right? Um, I know I was just Mags was just on the show a little bit ago, and she was talking about, um her father was an artist and he had all this physical paintings. And back in Poland, before World War II, they had to lock their house up and escape. And then, of course, when the war was over, her family went back and all of the paintings were gone. And I was wondering, I was like, would this be some kind of a use case to match up a physical, because she said that her father would be walking around, uh, the streets and see his art in someone else's cafe, and
Oh
this was
my god.
back in obviously 1945, 46, and so we didn't have any kind of digital way to verify that this was his art. Um, is that any kind of an IP use case that somebody could say, like, I physically this was done by me, or I don't know, just what would be the use case for a creator?
So using the open timestamps protocol, what you can do is prove in an irrefutable way
Mhm.
that a digital, a digital piece of information existed from a certain point in time onwards. So, one of the challenges or the reasons that the Guatemalan tribunal implemented this was, let's say after the election, someone comes out with an altered document and
Mhm.
accuses them of elections fraud. How prove that the documents that they used were created during
Mhm.
election night and were the actual documents that were used? So a use case, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, but in like art, maybe you can prove that a certain, if somebody copies your art, but you can prove that you created it first, then it sort of sets this precedent. Of course, in order to defend your property rights, you have to go through the traditional, uh, property rights legal system, intellectual property rights legal system.
Mhm.
But you can prove that this piece of digital information existed a certain time from now, right? So if somebody, DJ Valerie B Love appears in the future, you can prove that you were there first.
Right, yeah, I remember when I was working on like a TV series, manuscript proposal kinda thing, and, and I'm not in Hollywood, I don't know how all this stuff works, um, and I was just sort of like, "Well, how do I protect my idea when I wanna go pitch it to a producer or anything?" And then the solution, and this was, years ago, they were like, "Well, take a copy of it, stick it in like a FedEx or, something that would get stamped with a timestamp through
Timestamp.
FedEx,
Mhm.
send it to yourself, and it's obviously sealed so that if you have any issues in the future that somebody's like, oh, I stole that character idea. And it's like, no, I made up Bart Simpson. He's mine, that you would have that kind of proof in the form of a stamp from the post office or from, FedEx, UPS, whatever. So
Yep.
this, does this sound like something that could be useful for creators? And then again, how much does it create any issues with clogging up,
Oh,
the
yeah.
functionality of Bitcoin?
No, no. So
No.
this protocol is basically, I would say, like infinitely scalable,
Okay.
because what stored in so Bitcoin transactions have a little free text space, I would say, called an op return function. And in the
Okay.
op return function, you can put a little piece of arbitrary information. This is not an
Okay.
NFT or ordinal or anything. A little piece of a little bit of text, a couple bytes of text. But what's cool about the open timestamps protocol is you don't have to store one document per transaction. What's stored is actually the root of a Merkle tree. A Merkle tree, you combine a lot of documents, of hashes of documents, document into a single root. And then what's included into the Bitcoin transaction is that root. So as long as you have enough processing power on your computer, you can hash whatever amount of information and just include it in one single Bitcoin transaction. And so I say the protocol is infinitely scalable. It is if you have enough computing power on the computer that's going to be doing the hashing. But on the
Mhm.
Bitcoin side, it's a single Bitcoin transaction. Of course, in our use case, we were willing to pay higher fees because time was so important that when a
Mhm.
document was created, we wanted it to get included in the next block, because it was very important for the documents to come in as close as possible to the time where they
Right.
were generated. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the same for any other type of document, right?
And so regardless if you've got, 10 votes or 10 million votes, that you're documenting, it's still going to take up the same little chunk of space in one transaction, in one block. I'm still learning. Like, I don't know exactly how everything is formed. So my mind is still in. I'm always a student first, of course. um,
So on the voting side, it's a little bit different because we are sending Bitcoin transactions quicker, just because we want the vote counting process is not one single thing, but it goes on for maybe 6 or 8 hours. Or tally sheets are coming in, so we need to keep sending them sort of in real time. As soon as they get they're going to be merged into a Merkle tree and sent it to the Bitcoin blockchain.
okay.
But types of information, if you have a huge book or any other big piece of information, or a video, you can just hash it and that'll get included in the same sort of Bitcoin transaction. It's very interesting what you mentioned about sort of using time stamping your ideas using the postal service.
Yeah, I know. That's what they taught. That's what they were telling me because I was just like, I don't have a lot of money to go spend on lawyers on a possible idea, and they were like, this
Mhm.
costs you $10, to go send it FedEx or whatever. So I think that's an interesting idea. And then so anybody can go look at what's on those transactions. So you could, like, I could go in and look at whatever block and see,
Mhm.
okay, there were this many votes put into
No,
this. No, I can't see that.
you you need the original file, because what's stored inside the Bitcoin transaction is just a hash.
Okay.
So you can prove that the document exists. If you have the original document and you hash it, you can check against the blockchain to make sure that you have the real document. The actual
Okay.
information of the document is not stored inside Bitcoin, just a digital fingerprint. And back to your what you were saying about the post office, it costs $10. Maybe you have to go to the post office. With open timestamps, you can go to opentimestamps.org and do this for free. You don't even have to do the Bitcoin transaction. The timestamps is maintained by donations. You can just do it for free.
Oh, wow. What have you seen? Like, I'm sure you've explored lots of things. What have you seen that was like, "Oh, wow, people are doing this too with this?" Have you seen anything unexpected that they're using this process? Would you call it a protocol? What would you call open
Yeah,
stamps? Open
open
timestamps.
timestamp is a protocol. Yeah.
So, what have you seen that's interesting on, that you're like, "Whoa, someone's doing it for that?" Can you look and tell?
I've spoken with Peter Todd,
Mhm.
the guy who actually invented open timestamps.
Uh-huh.
Um, and Peter, the open timestamps has I think he released the first version in 2016 or
Mhm.
2017. And so he's seen a lot of people use it for different things. He told me about, for example, people who are documenting human rights abuses
Mm.
in sort of authoritarian uh, regimes, where they need to they need to prove that the document, that whatever, picture or photograph or whatever of a human rights is not a deep fake or any fake information.
Mhm.
So I've seen it used for that. Yeah.
That's oh my gosh. Oh, let's pull that thread right there. The deep fakes, right? That's a big deal. Obviously we're going to be navigating like a barrage of that coming, on every election cycle in addition to just any other time, right? But I think there's going to be a lot of problems there. So can this ooh, that's really exciting. Can this be a solution like at scale for so let's say I'm a campaign manager for Kennedy or whoever, right? Um, and I have whatever, 100 pieces of content that I want to use in my campaign. And okay, how at the end of a lot of these, the commercials or whatever, like, I approve this message, do you know what I'm talking about? Is that something that we could do in bulk and then at scale too for
Yeah.
these campaign managers?
That's really something that I'm very concerned with, these fakes. Like, if we just see the state of deepfake and like generative AI right now,
Mhm.
you extrapolate that 10 years, it's gonna be like, we can be having this conversation with me and I could be an AI,
Totally,
and
right.
there's no way of telling, right?
I mean, I think we're
And
all
that,
aliens anyway, so whatever. But, I mean, everyone's an alien because 'cause we're on a planet from outer space, you know? But it's true though, you're super right, and I mean, with just like right now, we're looking the way that I look at the AI technology that's only been starting to kinda get, able to for mainstream people to use, it's like Pong, back in the day with, like, doink, you have one pixel doing
right.
its thing, and I'm like, "Wow, look at what we can do now," 30 some years later, 40 years later, um, and I imagine how on earth are we gonna combat that in the
Yes.
future knowing, like, yeah, that's actually the president talking, or, yes, that's actually whoever it is, so this
Mhm.
is a huge benefit. Who knows about this here in the United States in the political realm? Is there anybody that you've brought it to their attention for the next elections? I know there's a bunch of elections in many countries this year. I wanna say 60 maybe? Um,
Yeah.
there's a
There's gonna be a
lot of
lot of
elections
elections.
happening, and so that means a lot of potential for unrest and all the I think because the precedent was set at the last, election here in the United States, it's possibly gonna be that's the way that the behavior is gonna have to go, especially if we've got Trump on board with all of his, shenanigans, and whatever the case, it's like maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong, but I think everyone's gonna start coming forward and being like, this wasn't fair and this wasn't counted
Well,
right and he stole the election. So can we get this in front of, the powers that be in a timely fashion,
so it's already happening. If you saw the last election in Brazil, something very similar to what happened in the U.S. Occurred, where the losing candidate said that the election was stolen.
Mhm.
He had there was a sort of an insurrection, or like a storm on Congress. They
Mhm.
destroyed a lot of things in the Congress building in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil.
Mhm.
So I mean, there's a president here, and it's just going to keep growing. And plus the fact that social media enables social media is, there's two sides, good and bad. I think the bad thing is that social media companies create algorithms that optimize only for engagement and not for the
Mhm.
truth.
Yeah.
And so outrageous information gets more engagement and gets more people watching it than the boring truth. But the other thing is that social media enables activists, like it happened in Guatemala, to come out of the blue and compete in elections against established traditional candidates with deep pockets, and that produces a shock. Nobody saw it coming, and all of a sudden, somebody got elected. And so, how can you create trust around the elections process? Because, like I said before, the elections process is really what underpins the legitimacy of power in a government, right? If people don't trust the elections process, that undermines the legitimacy of the power of the leader's power.
Mhm.
So in the U.S., so we partnered with a foundation called Open Dialogue Foundation. They're
Yeah,
based out of
Ludmilla and
Toronto.
everybody, and Bota
Mhm.
and Ludmilla, they're the bomb. I love those guys. Um,
Yeah. So we partner with them, a small sort of awareness campaign in the U.S. So we went to Washington D.C. a couple weeks ago and had several meetings in different senators' offices, to talk about this, about how Bitcoin can be used for good and for human rights and to uphold democracy, and sort of counter that narrative that Bitcoin is only used by bad people and terrorists or money laundering, whatever. Which is
and so what was your response? Like, I know that there's a lot of obviously angles that we talk to the policymakers through, whether it's through the environmental lens, whether it's human rights. Now we've got transparent elections. Are they eager to learn more? Are they still having the resistance and the FUD? Are they like, "Yeah, we want this."
they want to learn more. Yeah, especially on the
Amazing.
democracy
Mhm.
side. I think the people in the government care about democracy. That's
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I feel the United States is still like a golden standard in the world of democracy, and and so people are interested in this use case. I've had a lot of good conversations with people in government that are interested in how this technology can be used to basically protect these sort of sacred documents in elections.
And, like, so obviously we're hearing about, I just heard that Arizona is trying, possibly gonna be putting some of their, uh, is it their pension? Something on, maybe some Bitcoin there. And then obviously we've got, oh gosh, up in Wyoming, our wonderful Senator Lummis, Cynthia Lummis, so are you guys approaching certain already Bitcoin friendly folks so that we can get a coalition to get them to push this through at scale for the federal and then hopefully the state elections?
We've been approaching Bitcoin friendly and Bitcoin unfriendly people on both sides of the aisle. Um, Nobody can. I think this elections use case, you can't find a lot of people who are against it, right?
Good. And so for those people who have been against it, if there are any, what have been their biggest objections at the policy level? Like at the, at the those the that those
The crypto affinity,
it's just
the scam thing, right? Oh, how many billions of dollars in scams have happened in crypto?
mhm.
Yeah, like in some of the meetings, people would welcome and say, "Oh, you're the crypto guys," and so
You're
that's
like, "No,
something
we're
that
not."
we.
And did they
What?
respond when you try to help them understand the difference between Bitcoin and crypto?
Yeah, I have to say some people were more interested than others, but best effort to explain why Bitcoin and why not anything else.
So, obviously, Senator Warren has been a thorn in the side of Bitcoin. Just she doesn't seem to wanna meet with any of us. She doesn't wanna it doesn't seem like she's open to listen. Have you guys
Just the bankers.
Yeah, have you tried to approach her
She
on with
loves the
from this
bankers.
lens? Because she's all up in arms about the thinking it's a scam and the environment and boiling the oceans. I was like, well, here's another use case, Senator. What do you think about this? Like, you would think she would want to have fair and transparent elections. Has anybody gotten up in her grill about this?
Not that I know of. We tried to reach out, but they said they weren't available to meet. Um, they were short staffed or something. That's the excuse that I heard. Um, yeah, it's interesting with her. You know, I remember one of the hearings that she had where bankers, and she's saying like, "Oh, this is the first time that I agree with the bankers," and like being so happy with the bankers. I mean, and this sort of I draw a parallel here with the early days of voice over IP. So voice over IP, the ability to make phone calls over the internet.
Mhm.
Voice over IP came out in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mhm.
It was a new way of communicating. Being able to call people over the internet was mind blowing at the time. Um, and I know a guy who actually hosted a server in his basement, computer server, and had a website called freeworlddialup.com.
Okay.
And this free world dial-up, his name is Jeff Pulver, and freeworlddialup.com basically let any person in the world call another person online
Uh-huh.
for free. But the technology was like so primitive that it worked only one way. So I would have to talk, and then I would have to stop, and then it was like a two-way radio.
Okay.
And so this guy had it in his basement. It was a free thing, and all of a sudden, all the big telecoms of the United States sued.
Oh my
They sued
gosh.
him for operating an unregulated telecommunications service.
Oh my God.
And what did the telecom at that time? We're talking early 2000s. This was before Skype. They were saying, "Oh, this was." And I have to say, this was also right after 9/11. And so, what
Mm.
were the telecoms saying? Voice over IP. Terrorists are
Terrorists.
going to
Yeah,
use it.
terrorists are gonna
Terrorists
get
are
it.
going to use it. We need to
Mhm.
regulate it. We need to stop people from using it. That was a new internet protocol, just like open timestamps is an internet protocol, just like Bitcoin is an internet protocol. Voice over IP is an internet protocol. So these people sued this guy Jeff, and it went all the way up to the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and the Federal Communications Commission created something they called the Pulver Order, where basically they ruled in favor of Jeff Pulver, saying that voice over IP would not be considered a regulated telecommunications service because this would stifle innovation and put the United States on a back foot with the new developments that were going on in the internet early 2000s.
Wow.
Um, the Pulver Order just turned 20 years old a couple days ago. There was a big celebration in Washington D.C. because it was a landmark thing. Right now, you and I are talking over voice over IP. You use Apple FaceTime, voice over IP, WhatsApp calls, Signal, Telegram. All those services are voice over IP. Zoom
Wow.
calls, Google Meet, everything, right? So imagine if you had to get a license for setting up a Zoom call. Have to register with the government for setting up a Zoom call. It's ridiculous. And if you looked at some of the draft wording on this legislation that Senator Warren was trying to create, one of the terms that they invented was unhosted wallet.
Right.
And so unhosted wallets need to register with the government. That's
Right. I'm like,
outrageous.
are
That's
those
like a
12 words in my head? Is that unhosted? Do I need to go register my menopause memory with you, Senator Warren? Like,
are
no.
you gonna like are you gonna ban dice? Like I can create a seed phrase throwing dice. Are dice gonna be banned? I have to
I know.
register dice. It's ridiculous. It's like a First Amendment thing, right? A freedom of speech.
Very
Um,
much. And I'm glad that we have some of these precedents set that we can use them to start talking. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's so important. A lot of Bitcoiners I know are, fighting the good fight. We just had the what was it, the EIA? Was it the Energy Information something where they were trying to get all the miners like within 10 days that they
yeah,
had to go like disclose all of your proprietary information and locations and all that and all of these
I heard.
wonderful, you know, uh cyber hornets and lawyers and the policy folks just were like, I don't think so. So it's so necessary that we have all of these talented folks who understand how to deal with these big institute, these governments and whatnot and agencies that don't understand Bitcoin, and they're so afraid, and they're funded by the banks. And obviously, nobody wants to get rid of the money printer if you're one of the button pushers of a money printer. So, as much as I want to be like, yeah, we're just going to go underground and go do everything, it's like we operate in a system. And I think, we have to figure out how to intelligently navigate it, and outsmart the people who are just, they're behind the times, right? And so,
Look at the telecoms. They saw
right.
the threat of voice over IP to the legacy business model,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Anytime,
And so what
obviously,
are they doing? Fighting FUD, right? This is how we're gonna, protect our legacy business model. Look at the banks. What are they doing? This thing.
Fuddalicious. It's total Elmer Fudd out there. And, I, I, uh, I always, everybody says this, but it's like, follow the money, who's funding these, ridiculous bills and these ridiculous policies, and like keep going and digging down. And it's like, who's writing the check ultimately to the person who's writing that proposal or these things. And so I think it seems to boil down a lot to the banks. And yeah, I get that they don't want to lose that ability to go print money, or obviously the telecom companies didn't want to go lose any of their market share to this type of thing. But it's
If they're
like,
charging by the minute, right? They were charging for calls by the minute. They were, making a lot of money.
totally. It's like, I know, it's like if that was my business, I'd be like, wait a minute, I don't want somebody to come and have some free thing or something easy that is going to pull all these people away from what I'm selling. I get it as a business person. I think as from a policy level, that bothers me, because I hope, and I always did since I, was a kid. And then once I started getting older, I was always like, I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice and go save the world and go to law school and go, be the good, help the good guys win, and, get rid of the bad stuff out there. And I want to still believe that we have a system, that there's some of those people in there that are creating policy that are for the public good, and that aren't
Yes.
puppets on the strings of the banks or the companies, or God knows dark money, who's doing what. But um,
And if
it's
we
a
if we
tough
go
one.
full circle, we need to protect democracy.
Yeah.
And we need to fight for democracy, because that's the only way that people can affect change in regulations
It
through
is.
democracy, through a democratic process. And we're seeing, for example, social media companies now with algorithms and everything, they probably know you better than you know yourself. So
Oh, they
they know your
totally, they're
unconscious
predictive
desires,
models, every little thing, and they're obviously listening to us all the time on our phones,
and
like.
so they can influence your behavior, because
Mhm.
it's they if they know me better than I know myself, they can influence my behavior. And of course, these companies, um, they're there's this Harvard professor. Her name is Shoshana Zuboff, and she talks about surveillance capitalism,
Yep.
and how social media companies are in a collision course against democracy, because democracy is going to try to regulate, for example, privacy, what
Right.
information these companies can keep, who owns this personal information. And so her prediction is that in the future, these companies are going to try to block democratic processes, or influence and manipulate people's behavior against democracy in order to protect their ability to harvest this information.
Well, a couple things here. I wanna bring up 2 points with Tucker Carlson, and, um, oh god, Russell Brand. And Tucker Carlson had somebody on, and I'm blanking on his name, but he was basically going over, kind of like censorship as a service. And there's companies out there that, that's their model, and that's what they were doing during these elections, and trying to moderate, the social media companies, and telling them like, oh, these are the bad guys, and you should start thinking about this and plugging these things in your algorithms. And then of course, the election cycle would get over, and then now they've got, 3 years ish, give or take, to go figure out what else to do with all that time. So they'd go figure out, well, what should we censor now? And then be competing for all of this, you know, they've got to go, if you've got a hammer, they want to go find a nail, and so that's it. I was just like, really? There's companies that do that? That's insane. And then watching a Russell Brand episode about, because he's been censored and all the stuff that's been going on with him, and them trying to, you know, uh, bring up just old stuff from the past that he's been very clear about, with his addiction and sexual history and being a player and all this stuff. And they're trying to bring it up and make him look really awful and really censor him. He started doing some very in-depth work on um, different censorship models and different manipulation models on the social media. So there's these different. He did a real. I should. I'll find the link for that episode and I'll put it in the show notes. But he kept doing the connect the dots, connect the dots, connect the dots to the social media the companies, and to these censorship companies that go to the politics, that go to all the bank. It's just like, oh my God, like, how can we ever even think, Noster obviously is really the only place I feel like I can get, uh, a fair opportunity, that I'm going to see my friends' posts, or that, obviously there's no algorithm over there that I'm aware of on the platform, the apps that I'm using. But is there anywhere that we know that we can just have uncensored, unfiltered truth?
Well,
I
Noster,
know.
I think.
It's crazy. And I think, Rafa, I think about our kids, right? Like, I just saw something on the headlines that the Congress may have passed something to ban TikTok, which I'm fine with that. Ban that stupid app. But I mean, sorry, TikTok. Uh, but our children are, they're so malleable, and their brains aren't even developed till they're 25. And if you give them a phone, they can go get in and they can hack the crap out of it. They're smarter than we are, and they're just like, yeah, I can do this workaround and put these apps on, mom. Um, their little brains are completely they're manipulated. They're not even their own thinkers, because everything that they see from a young age has been manipulated by the platforms. It's manipulated by the ads, and the people who are making the ads, and God knows whatever else. And obviously what we've seen with Google and their AI disaster that happened a couple weeks ago, so it's like, what else is super manipulated out there? How can we ever even trust anything? It's like, go in nature and hug a freaking tree and get rid of all this other stuff, right? That's the only thing that's true and real. Um,
Yeah.
but
So what do we do about elections, right?
I know.
How do we know what's true? In terms, at least, I don't know what politicians say, like whether they say the truth or not, but at least who won the election, right? That's critical information.
Have you thought about reaching out to Kennedy to talk to him about this, and just getting this as a part of his platform to start pushing for transparent elections?
I have not reached out to him. Initially, I would say I want to stay away from politics,
Okay.
just because what we're doing is an is not a partisan thing. It's just a technology to for truth. Um, and so my initial reaction would be, I don't want to be sort of associated with a specific candidate, or I don't want this technology to be politicized. I want, like, my ideal would be to, regular people asking for this, like the Bitcoin community, or people
Right.
who are, you know, not uh,
Not
candidates,
running,
right? Not running, yeah.
not candidates. Yeah, I know. I think there's
Because this
2
is
sides.
by the people, right? This is for the people,
Yeah,
by the
it is.
people, like
It
Bitcoin.
I agree. I agree with that, but I'd also consider, obviously these folks have big audiences, big voices, and if they can move this protocol forward for truth, and it doesn't have to be politicized. And if you just say, like, every single candidate, it's available to start pushing to have that transparent, counting of votes, and able to do this, I think that, who knows? I'm just, playing devil's advocate here to your point, because we need to get this done, and we do have this big election coming up, and it's very impactful because if we go, a certain direction, the environment might get impacted and more human rights might get pulled away from us, in here. And if we go another way, there could be a whole nother shit show. I mean, there's a shit show anywhere you look at it, you know. It's like there's none of these candidates, in my opinion, are, ultimately I'm not a big political person. I don't love politics, but at
In terms of
least
the
we
use of
could
this
know
protocol,
that the people have spoken, and we can count that the people have spoken, so we don't have another Jan 6 and have just all that unrest. It's like we have bigger problems in our world than dealing with counting votes. Like, let's count the damn votes and get to work. You know what I mean? Like, that shouldn't be the biggest point of contention. If we have a solution, a technical solution that can solve this problem, let's get on to business. Because think about all the time that has been completely wasted, and uh, productivity that has been lost on many fronts because of all of this. The election was stolen, la la la, and it's like, imagine if all of those resources of minutes and hours and weeks and months and years with all these people got redirected to solving the damn problems that we're supposed to be solving, as these elected officials are doing, supposed to do.
the way it works in the US is that elections are sort of organized and run by county clerks.
Hmm.
So these are the people who we would love to speak to, right? The county clerks, the
Yeah.
people who are involved at the local level organizing elections. Not that, presidential candidates or people like that, but more on the ground with count at the county level, who are the people who actually organize the election for the specific county, and they get certain leeway on making decisions on how they want to implement the election process.
And so what's your strategy right now for reaching out to these people? Do you have a team? Do you need help? Do you want us Bitcoiners to help you? How can we make this real?
Yeah, we would. It would be incredible to get help from Bitcoin. We are doing our best effort and reaching out
Mhm.
to people and having interesting conversations around this. But any people in any person in the Bitcoin world that is interested in this and or wants to talk to people at the county level that are in charge of running elections, we'd be happy to have that conversation and see how this can be adopted.
And is there a playbook for talking to the people? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're like, cool, I just got Bitcoin rocks. Somehow I got something in the mail, and I'm sure I signed up for it, but uh, I don't remember a lot of things lately because it's getting old. But um, they have a cool little pamphlet that you give to businesses to, like, orange pill a business, and here you go, da da da. This is what you can do. Is there something like that that you guys have that is, if these folks start calling you or reaching out to you, that you would be like, yeah, this is, 5 steps to talk to your, local election official.
There is a documentary called
Okay, here we
Immutable
go.
Democracy.
Okay,
Immutable Democracy is a documentary about what happened, how Bitcoin was used to safeguard elections documents in the Guatemalan elections. And so it
okay.
describes the process from different perspectives, from volunteers that are running the table, to every person that was sort of involved in the elections process. That, yeah, you can go to simpleproof.com, and that's where you can see the documentary that describes the process and how, um, using open timestamps, we can safeguard this information. So yeah, check out that. I would recommend people who are interested going to simpleproof.com and checking out the documentary called Immutable Democracy. Definitely, it's a good 15 minutes uh, investment into understanding how this works.
Amazing. And then, so basically, this is how it works. A simple process to safeguard documents. You receive and fingerprint.
Mhm.
You get the documents, you timestamp and store, and then you verify through simple proof, and it's on your node. Like, so
Yeah.
this is amazing. And I'm so excited that you guys are doing this, because we obviously need this, in in the workflow of democracy not getting annihilated, because we don't want that. Um, and so okay, so where's the best place for people to, who are interested in participating and supporting you? Is it your website? Is it Twitter?
Yeah,
Where can everybody go?
simpleproof.com.
Okay, cool. So then there's an email or some way to contact you
Mm-hmm.
there?
Hello
Okay,
at simpleproof.com. Yeah.
amazing. And do you have like a team? Is it volunteers? Like people, you have a team of volunteers that are helping you, or is it something people would get? I'm just curious. Is it a
Yeah,
job? Like, I
we
don't.
don't
I'm
have
just
job
asking.
openings right now. We're a bootstrapped startup still. We haven't received any VC investment,
Are you
but
on
yeah, there
Geyser?
are
Do you have a Geyser fund?
guys are
You don't know what Geyser is? Oh, dude.
no.
Um, so Geyser.fund is, it's kind of like a GoFundMe page. And you know what GoFundMe is?
Mhm.
Right. So it's GoFundMe for Bitcoin. And so like any kind of project, so they have like, I have a Bitcoin for Peace thing up there that I don't promote. So by the way, everybody go donate to Bitcoin for Peace because we're going to be making a book series like kind of chicken soup for the soul with a bunch of before and after stories for Bitcoin and, people, planet, prosperity, kids, domestic violence, all the stuff. So we want to document stories and use cases about why, the before and after of Bitcoin and how it changes people's lives in the world. But you can put anything up there. Like some people just have it for, a film that they're working on or a book that they're working on or a business project that they're working on. So it's one way that you can start promoting and people can give you, 10 sats or 10 million sats, whatever. Um, but it's GEYSER dot fund. So that could maybe help you get this out there, and cover some costs for getting this into the right hands. I don't know. Is
Yeah, so we're
Geyser's
looking for
awesome.
volunteers. Yeah, we're definitely looking for volunteers who want to, you know, get the word out and do some advocacy and bringing this into to the attention of people who are in positions to make decisions around elections. Definitely.
I love it. I'm just as you said, volunteers, like, we've got like Bitcoiner jobs, we've got the
Mhm.
Bitcoin talent company, we've got Martell's layer for talent where people can put up and say, hey, here's a job or here's I want a job. Do we have anything for volunteers?
Not yet. No.
That would be
It's been
interesting
just
'cause
a small.
you think about like all of the educators and all the different projects around the world. And I think about Bitcoiners who, maybe I just have an hour and I want to contribute to something in a music project, or I want to contribute to an after school program teaching kids about Bitcoin or whatever it might be, but just kind of a volunteer matchmaking service that could be similar to a Fiverr, but on, for Bitcoin projects. That's an interesting
Mhm.
layer that maybe these other three organizations can put up in their on their websites. Because then you could put something up and say, we need some volunteers to get the word out, and these are what we need, and people could click and go get it. So like a volunteer marketplace type thing. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, I can't stop thinking
Cool.
about trying to find solutions for Bitcoin. They just um, and love and making the world better. Like we need this, like all these angles of solving the problems I think are very, very important. Um, so what's going to happen next? Like what do you have on your to-do list for the next few months here?
Just talking to more people, going to conferences, discussing this with people, decision makers in the election
Mhm.
space. That's sort of where we're focused on right now. But we're also talking to people who are not in the election space, but are in areas where where truth is very important for public documents.
Mhm.
So mostly in the public sector, that's where we're involved and having good conversations. Yeah.
Are you seeing any use case for like somebody's like will or an estate plan and just so the kids don't fight over something and then try to get their you know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just thinking like
Yes.
is that something that people are using this
That
for?
no, no. That's an interesting use case, but when you mentioned right, the will, who cares about the will? Only the family of the deceased person. Whereas we're looking for use cases that are huge impact, right? For
Yeah.
like elections, right? How many people care about elections? All the citizens of the country, right? In the
Yeah.
case of Guatemala, it's 17 million people.
Right.
So those are the types of use cases. at least that we want to invest our time into, like these things that can have a huge impact, right?
Total and so what's the business model though for you guys? So, like, let's say whatever, a state or a country wants to adopt this, would they just pay you a fee to help implement it, or
Hmm.
what's the business model
Yep.
here? So
Yep.
it's just a fee to you, it's not a per transaction, it would just be like a fee to set
It's a per
everything up?
document fee because the documents are stored in our cloud.
Got it.
So it has like a per document fee, but at the end of the day, it's the customer's choice whether they want to, put it in our cloud or keep it in their own space. When it's stored in the Bitcoin blockchain, it's stored forever, right? So the digital fingerprint is stored forever. The actual digital document, that's where you need to decide where you wanna store it.
Cool, okay, awesome. Well, any last thoughts? Like, what are your I wanna hear from you, Rafa. What are your hopes and dreams for democracy on planet Earth? Do you believe we can really truly have, fair and open elections and democracy, and can we grow it? Because it seems like authoritarianism and dictatorships are growing versus shrinking, and it seems like democracy is obviously at a big risk.
I'm very concerned for democracy. Um, I'm I see that in the future, these social media companies and these algorithm companies are going to
Mhm.
be in a collision course with democracy,
Yeah,
and so we need to establish the tools right now before that moment. So when that happens, people can go out and vote, and vote for what they believe in. I'm scared of this whole manipulation thing and how it's gonna you know get worse all the time.
yeah.
And so I think we need right now it's a couple of years that we have before you won't be able to tell what's real and what isn't, at least in the digital world.
And I think there's a lot of apathy with young voters. I have apathy and I'm an old voter, right? And I feel like, is it really getting counted? Does it matter? And certainly in the United States with the Electoral College, which I think should be completely abolished, um, like one person, one vote. Why are we not at this? I don't even understand the freaking Electoral College. It's always just it's not intelligent to me. but but like, what would you say to a young person right now who might be listening to this, who's just like, "I'm not gonna vote, screw that, it's not gonna matter anyway."
For democracy, because democracy is just as much about electing new leaders as being able to remove leaders that you don't want anymore. And
Mhm.
if you don't protect democracy, then you may lose that power forever. um, and be in a sort of authoritarian regime. So it's very important to protect the democratic process. It's basically the only way that people can affect change in government without without a violent revolution, right? Um,
Yeah.
and
And
I
and
think
Bitcoin is a
young.
tool for peace. It's a peaceful revolution. It's this peaceful tool to create, you
Mhm.
know, power shifts in these institutions and whatnot. So I think
For peace. Yeah.
I love this angle. I love this angle for Bitcoin and voting, and I wanna learn more about it. Are there any, have you run across any Bitcoiners or any conversations where people are like, this is not a good, way to use Bitcoin, and this is bad. Like, have you run into objections from Bitcoiners, about this process, or has everybody been like, "High five, bro. This is great, Rafa."
No, some people are concerned about this being misused as a way to legitimize election fraud, for example. And if somebody's
Legitimize
committing
election fraud?
right, if
What do you
somebody uses this and just says, "Oh, it's on the blockchain, so there was no fraud," right?
so they just kind of
Technology.
just that just because it's on the blockchain, it must be true. So, but is that what you're saying? Because obviously, when you're saying that the people are counting by paper, you can still manipulate that to some degree if,
Mhm,
you pay off those 5 guys who are watching or whatever it is, the observers or however it might work.
mhm.
So just because it's on the blockchain doesn't mean that it is true. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes.
Yeah.
So people are concerned in like authoritarian regimes
Mhm.
using this as a way to sort of say that there was an electoral fraud. In the case of Guatemala, um, 200,000 people are mobilized for the election. And
Wow.
so, yeah, imagine it must be hard keeping a conspiracy between five people, but between 200,000 people, I mean, somebody has to say something. Nobody's come forward yet, so I don't think there's a conspiracy there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know, I like that. This is definitely a form of decentralization, like not having everything be reliant on a software program to just count the votes. It's like, yeah, I really like that opened my eyes a lot to the value of paper, and the value of humans doing this. Because who knows with AI and all the other things of how things can get manipulated and make it look really, really good. So I think that's really great. So I appreciate you opening my eyes to paper again. But yeah, I think it's like for all of us listening, and it's like obviously there's different countries and different places that don't even have the opportunity for you to cast a vote, and especially if you're a woman, you know. And so here, we're in any place where you do have this opportunity, you might as well. You might as well participate, even if you're a skeptic, even if you're apathetic, even if you don't like the candidates, you know, choose the lesser of two evils or five evils or however many there are. But we do have to participate. And I know, like, in our local elections here where I live, let me ask you this, if you've ever heard of this, and I forget the name of what they called this, but I thought it was absurd. They needed a certain percentage for the vote for the mayor. Like, we had a mayor of our city, and um, whatever it was there's, I don't know, 5 candidates for the mayor, and the winner didn't achieve whatever the threshold was for, I don't know if it needed to be 50%, 40%, whatever it was. But the winner did not receive it, but they won by a substantial amount over the second place person. So it was like, whatever, 25,000 votes to 20,000 votes, and clear winner, super clear winner. But because those 25,000 votes, for example, didn't meet that threshold, they did this whole other thing where they took the second vote, like your second choice, and then they accumulated that. And then the person who was in second actually won because a bunch of people used their alternative vote things and voted for this person. And I was just like, what? It was bizarre. And I couldn't believe that this is happening. And this is in Boulder, Colorado. And so now we've got a second place winner with the second place votes who won. And I'm like, why doesn't the winner just get to win? That's, to me, democracy. It's like, I don't care if you have 2 candidates or 20 candidates, like, may the best person win and let's get to work. I don't get it. Have you ever heard of any like places doing that?
No, honestly, no. This is the first time I hear this. If I would be concerned if this was just an arbitrary thing that they said, okay, let's just do it this way, or if there's some, like, established procedure or law or rule to do this. And if that's the case, then that should be changed. Then democracy is the way to change it, right? But
I guess so,
if
but it
it's
was
just an
voted in, and
arbitrary thing,
apparently, somehow, whenever it was, this was like on the ballot, and it was voted that this is the new way that we should do the voting. And I'm
mm,
like,
okay.
this is not the way that we should do voting. Who thought of that? This is a stupid idea. Sorry. I mean, I, I don't get it. It's just like, and I don't even get the electoral college. Like, why don't we just have one vote for a person and then see who won? Why do we have to have all this nonsense?
In Guatemala, it's one person, one vote.
That
Um,
seems pretty
but
logical.
Guatemala has 30 years of democracy, 40 years of democracy. So it's a very young democracy compared to the United States. I wouldn't be able to say what people thought when they created the Electoral College. I don't exactly agree with it, but I mean, what can I say? I'm not a fan, but
I was going to ask you that. I wanted to understand, if you knew about other, I don't know, all the election processes in all the other countries. And are we the only country that has an electoral college, or is that common in other places?
that I've heard of United States that I know of, but I don't know of others.
We're just like everyone's on the metric system, but we're on this other ridiculous system. So,
What's concerning is somebody can try to use that electoral college process to try to, um, nullify the will of the people. Whole fake elector thing. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's very scary.
it is. It's like, can't we just go back to common sense governance? That would be such a treat, if we've even ever had it. I mean, probably not in my lifetime we've had it, and I don't know. I just anyway, la la la. Um, well, cool. Am I gonna see you at any conferences coming up? Do you have any plans to travel and go what are you doing for the halving?
No plans. No plans. Just
I don't know. I know I need to be with Bitcoiners for sure. I don't know exactly where I'm gonna be, but Peter told me I should come to London, so, maybe I'll talk with him about spinning some tunes and talking about Bitcoin for peace over there with those wonderful London folks, so, that would be cool, or I don't know where he's doing it, but that would be really neat. Anything for the rest of the year? You gonna go back to El Salvador? You're gonna go what do you got going on? Do you
yeah,
know?
maybe go to El Salvador. No plans really. I'm just you know on this simple proof. We're still developing more software to make it more easy to understand for people. So now you can just create a visualization tree and see how a document is actually linked to a Bitcoin transaction. Like see it visual manner, not just trust the code.
Mhm.
So we're
Yeah.
we're working on that. I'm like pretty busy on. I'm a computer nerd, so I'll just stay in my
You're an
office.
awesome computer nerd, Rafa. I love you. So, hey, everybody who's listening or watching, you guys go check out Rafa_Cordon, Cordon, and get a hold of him if you guys want to start volunteering and getting this tool into your local election officials office so that you guys can have fair elections that are transparent. So, Rafa, I know I'm not like Peter or Natalie, or certainly not a Joe Rogan, but I'm hoping that anybody listening might want to help and support democracy using your tool, and I think it could be cool. Like, what another neat way, another neat story that we can tell about how Bitcoin is helping change the world. Uh, I love it so much. So, yeah, any final thoughts for the audience before we rock and roll?
I'm not just check out simpleproof.com, check out the documentary, and remember that democracy is something that we need to defend. If nobody defends democracy, we may lose that power and never get it back.
Yeah, I know it's like extinction, right? You don't want to have any species go extinct, and we don't want our democracy to go extinct because dark ages do last for quite a while before we can get our freedoms back. So, especially now with the surveillance state and all of these other tools that they're trying to control us with. So, I do believe we can't take this lightly. This is not, oh, maybe we'll do this. It's like our freedom and um, our privacy is hugely at risk, and technology is
Yes.
obviously our friend, and it can be our foe when it's put in the hands of people who only care about their own power. And I
Yeah.
think it's very important work that you're doing, Rafa. And I hope that everybody here follows you and checks you out and, stands up for freedom where they are. So, yeah, this is awesome. And yeah, I really appreciate you. And I look forward to seeing you in person again. And everybody who's listening, thanks again for tuning in. And my name is DJ Valerie B. Love, and this is a Bitcoin for Peace podcast. So, peace, love, and warm aloha. Right on.